You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.
All right, good morning, LA. It is Thursday, December 1st. My goodness. I'm your host, Katerina Cozias, and I'm here with you every Thursday morning as we gab all things life after 40. You can catch up with me anytime via LA radio.com, LAtalkradio.com. When I learn to talk, I will be able to say that clearly. You can also catch up with me on my personal website. It's globalgab.com. That's global-gab.com, where I gab with you about all top trending international headlines and do some analysis for you on what's happening around the world. We also do replay all of our LA Talk Radio episodes for LA40, so do catch me there. Instagram and Twitter at Katerina Cozias. I make it easy. I would love to gab with you. And I'm so excited to be able to gab in studio today with these two lovely ladies.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
ladies. I'm joined today by Kaitlin Robinson. She's to my left. And to the left of her is Bianca Rodriguez. Both of these ladies are marriage and family therapists. And we are going to be delving into the interesting topic of limiting beliefs today, and how limiting beliefs might be affecting your ability to make that next step in life, and also what sorts of limiting beliefs we have. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of that with you today as well, and how we can overcome those. So big episode coming up. Before we get into that, though, a little chit chat. Kaitlin, I know you're local to LA, born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
Has the traffic always been this bad?
No. I remember in the 80s it being a lot less congested. I also remember when you'd be on the 405 at 75 miles an hour.
Oh, wow. Back in the day.
Back in the day.
That's funny.
No, it's much worse now.
It's much worse. Bianca, how long have you been in LA?
I've been in LA 12 years.
Okay, so you're pretty local
You're
now
local.
as well.
I am. This is home.
It's
Absolutely.
official.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's it's a pleasure to have you here, because for those of you that are just tuning in, LA40 is really has been put together to remind people that sometimes our society really does have an unwritten rule about aging, and aging is almost always looked at as a negative. And LA40 is really here to tack into people in their 40s and 50s and possibly even heading into their 60s and just remind you that age really is just a number. I know that sounds cliche, but it is. Age is a reflection of how many years you've been on the planet, not what your potential for change and progress is. And so tune in with me every Thursday morning as we get into those topics. Girls, we are going to chat about limiting beliefs. And before we do, I'd love for each of you to just give a little background on where you're coming from in terms of your careers and in terms of the work that you do, where people can find you outside of this episode, and then we can get into a little bit of the meat. So, Kaitlin.
Hi.
Hi.
So I am Kaitlin Robinson. You can find me at askkaitlin.com, and every Sunday I have a great show called Soul Stretch Sunday, where you get psycho-spiritual advice and tips of how to live a more whole and actualized and loving life. So it actually really fits into the topic that we're talking about today, is how to dispel limiting beliefs, which is something that I work with all of my clients, and how to live a more whole and conscious, loving life.
Fantastic. We'll get into a couple of your tips before we close up today's episode.
Fantastic.
Bianca, who are you?
Hi, I'm Bianca Rodriguez of You Are Complete, and I am a soul-centered psychotherapist. I've been practicing for over 10 years, and I bring people spiritual solutions, SOUL, to live the life that you are meant to. And that ties into dropping those limiting beliefs, because your soul knows. And once we can tap into that infinite intelligence that is our true selves, sky's the limit. So I help people do that, and every week I have a vlog on Fridays. You can catch me at yourcomplete.com. I'm on Snapchat. I'm on Instagram stories. I like people to follow me through my life and watch me implement spiritual solutions throughout the day as I'm helping people, as I'm on shows, as I'm rocking and rolling.
Well, and that's great. And the thing is, limiting beliefs, there are so many different kinds of limiting beliefs, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But one of the things I think that often happens to people, especially people that are sort of in that middle age, midlife, 40s and 50s again, the show is primarily geared at Gen Xers. If you're not in that age range, don't worry, we are still going to be communicating with you. But effectively, the limiting beliefs become a problem, I think, when you don't realize that you're even having them. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to that old saying, how do you get out of a prison that you don't know that you're in? So I suppose one of the first things is, if you have someone that comes to you and says, I'm not making the progress I would like to make in my relationship, in my finances, how do you identify what some of their limiting beliefs might be?
I think stepping back and looking at life objectively and looking at the earliest imprints of your childhood especially, and seeing who your caregivers were and what their primary thought processes were, how much your religion impacted you, your society, your family, and breaking it down step by step to see what those early influences were, those first thoughts that were
How important are those first, let's say, 5 years of life? How much do they imprint onto what is ultimately going to become our character?
1,000%.
Yep. Oh, really?
That's Freud always said you're set by age 7. You're gelled.
Wow.
And there's different theories on that. Some people say you're gelled by age 1, but those first formative years are incredibly impactful.
And what I've actually found is that so we have major brain development going on in the early years, and when I work with people that have these limiting beliefs or have things that were traumas, like little T traumas, oftentimes when things happen and our needs aren't met during that early period of our life, we have what's called pre-verbal trauma, and it's really fascinating, and especially through my own work, because I've been in therapy, because all good therapists are always in therapy, to start to figure out that some of these things are like wired into you, and you don't even have a voice for them yet.
It's
So
cellular.
give me an example of that. Yeah. So
Sure, absolutely. So one of the most important things with children is that children's parents attune to them. And so there's something called like circular learning that happens even with infants. So like an infant looks at you, and what do? You smile back at the infant. The infant is now starting to understand that that's what happiness feels like, because the infant is looking at you and getting that information. And so kids that have not been attuned to by their parents, obviously this runs the spectrum from, parents that are emotionally neglectful just because maybe they're too busy or they're not in tune with their own emotions. So they're not able to, when a child comes home and is upset, to verbalize for the kid, like, oh, hey, I see you're really upset here. It starts there, and then it ends all the way right to parents who are physically and emotionally abusive, sexually abusive, and also just totally neglectful, which I've worked a lot with foster children, which is where most of my training happened. And so it's really, really important that parents, that's why there's all those initiatives with First Five, like reading to your child, doing all these things, because that's where kids start to get the attunement of what emotions are supposed to feel like, and to get a secure base of knowing that their feelings are okay, their feelings are real, and they are seen. All I feel like we really want is to be fully seen. And so it's really important for kids. And so kids developmentally, and then I swear I'll stop talking, are egocentric. So that means that developmentally, all children believe that everything happens because of them. So when you're working often, like, right, you'll see teenagers or 10-year-olds like, my parents got divorced, is it because of me? It's because children are innately egocentric. And so if you have a parent that's not attuning to you, you start to create beliefs about yourself. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I don't matter. I don't need to be seen. And that sets the stage for a whole host of limiting problems that can really, create issues in relationships and work, self-esteem, all that stuff.
I'd like to remind people that they are more than welcome to join this conversation. We would love to have you dial in and share some of your thoughts and maybe some of your experiences. You can reach us anytime here during this hour at 818-570-5085. Again, that's 818-570-5085. So going back to that and to being a youngster, you have, let's say you're now 45. And you're thinking, gee, I'd love to do this, but I can't because. Is that because you can really trace it all the way back to when the kid was possibly 3 years old?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I find that a lot of the time. I really do. Most clients that I work with, we definitely are going to be talking about childhood stuff. And how I kind of call all this stuff that we're talking about is like your story. Like, what's your story? Like, what's your story about yourself? And that was created through your experience that you've had throughout
But
your
how
life.
beneficial is delving into your story, which is all historical at that point,
Mm-hmm.
versus just closing that chapter and looking forward?
I think it's important you have to shed light on the past to be able to look at where you are now, to recreate a new story, because you are the director of your life. This stage is a play that you get to create. You get to create your reality. And by stepping back and looking at the history, illuminating it, you can then say, well, this is why it happened. Okay, this isn't working for me any longer. How can I redirect my play? How can I reorient myself to live a more happy life? And then you can start the process of closing that door and stepping into a new threshold.
You know, I was doing a little bit of reading up before this episode, and some of the more common limiting beliefs, and this is especially seen in people in their 40s and 50s that are looking at possibly making a change in their career, making a change to the city they live in, some sort of change in their 40s and 50s. Limiting belief number 1, I can't be my real self or I'll be judged. So limiting belief, we'll get back to these. Limiting belief number 2, I can't fall in love or I'll get my heart broken again. Limiting belief number 3, I can't pursue my dream because I may fail. And I know this one spoke a little bit to me. I'll get back to my story in just a little bit. Next one, I don't need to be successful, so I'm never going to bother to strive for it. It's kind of like that, hey, I don't really need money, so I'm not going to bother trying to make a lot of it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. And then, of course, it's too late to pursue my dreams. So how does one who has that, you know, this idea of, I want to be myself, but I don't want to be, I'm scared of being judged, how would you tackle that as an issue?
I think it's important to look at why we're wired that way. You know, as social creatures, we're meant to congregate. We're supposed to support each other. That's our survival mechanism. And if we have a rejection, a social rejection, it's almost as though we experience an ego death. Therefore, we're shunned. We're an outcast. Therefore, we're more likely to not be able to survive. So if you're looking at, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be rejected, I'm going to experience a psychological death, then you have an issue. But that's not really true. You have to step back and say, okay, well, you know, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to be completely rejected. I am whole. I am complete just as I am. And then you start aligning to people who really do support you, who aren't going to reject you.
I like what you're saying in that. I don't know if you guys have heard of Byron Katie. Byron Katie has written a book called The Work. And basically there's a 4-step process that you can use to do exactly what Kaitlin said. And so all of those beliefs, Katerina, that you mentioned, all of those beliefs, you can ask yourself, is this true? And your first reaction is probably like, yeah. And then the second question is this really true? Like, is it really true that if I am my true self that I will be rejected? Like, is that really true? Has that happened every single time? Will it always happen every single time? And the answer is that that's usually no. And then you would ask yourself, how do I feel when I have this thought? And then you get the litany of insecure, worthless, sad, unlovable, all these things. And then the fourth question I love is, how would you feel or who would you be without that thought? And then you're like, I would be free, I would be open, I would be courageous, I would be all these things. And right there is a little cognitive behavioral intervention that you can do to see that all this stuff we're talking about, to me, comes down to choice. You have to realize that you have a choice about how you feel and about how you interpret your life. And it's not about what happened to you, it's about what do you do now. Yes, we need to shed light on that. I believe we need to understand things. Whatever we don't own owns us. So we have to not only shed light on the dark parts, we have to bring the darkness to the light. And that's where the spiritual stuff comes in for me, is I ask my higher power to take all that is broken, all that I don't understand, all that is painful, and I ask God to take those things away from me, and I do that with clients.
Now, Bianca, have you always been spiritual? I mean, or how did you? I mean, I'm curious because I'm moving into that realm a little bit, but I'm not nearly where you're at. How did you get to be spiritual in that sense? Because it sounds as though that has helped shape your path.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So I was always kind of a spiritually minded kid. I always knew that the earth and the animals and the energy and everything was all connected. I grew up in Connecticut, and I would find a bird dead on the road. I would bring it home. I'd do a whole burial ceremony for it. Very native. I really resonate with Native American spirituality.
Okay. Then Are you Native American?
No, I'm Cuban and Italian.
Okay.
Hello.
I was going to say, I didn't think there was any Native American in you.
It
okay,
speaks
but go on.
to me. It speaks to me. And then I went to Catholic school, and I knew as a kid that, the God that was being presented to me was very judgmental, and, if I did certain behaviors, there was something bad about me. Mm-hmm. And I remember really grappling with that because innately I knew that I was good. Mm-hmm. I was okay. Like, I was good. Why would God be mad if I did this or I did the other thing? So that was kind of something that I grappled with. And then what's interesting is that when I was 18, I'm kind of like hyper. I've definitely struggled with anxiety. My mom gave me a VHS.
Like a tape?
Like a videotape of Eric Schiffman doing yoga with Ali McGraw in the middle of the desert, which at 18 years old I started to do all the time.
Yoga?
Yoga. Yeah, it was a yoga video this was before like yoga was hot.
Really
like
mainstream.
My mom was on it. My mom was like, this girl needs to chill out. We're giving her a yoga video. And so I was doing that yoga video, and at the end when you're in Savasana, he says, when you let go of everything, all that is left is love. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all these little things were like speaking to me. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of, was kind of into yoga, and I was studying therapy, and I was kind of learning about mindfulness. But what really fast forwarded me into a spiritual path was when it turned out that I was an alcoholic.
Oh my.
Yep. So about 5 years ago, I was in a group therapy process, and as a client, and the therapist said to me it was like another event where I had gone out and I had drank too much, even though I was only supposed to be having 2 drinks, and I ruined a party. And all kind of alcoholics and addicts have different bottoms. My bottom was not so low, but it was low enough for me that I was emotionally crippled. And people become emotionally bankrupt when they're using alcohol and drugs. And I really believe that it's a spiritual malady. And so she tells me, you're an alcoholic. I lose my stuff. We can curse on here. And in that moment I realized that, oh my gosh, I must really have a problem if I'm reacting. I'm throwing a tantrum. I went back to being like a 14-year-old. So talk about the developmental stuff, right? And so I went on the journey of becoming a recovered alcoholic. And through the support groups that I participate in, it's really a spiritual program. And I learned that I have to surrender everything to a power greater than myself in order for me to find peace and to be who I am really meant to be.
Now, would you say that is the case for everyone that has a limiting belief? That they just really
I'm having deja vu.
Yes.
Bizarre.
Oh,
I love when that happens.
Amazing.
I love when that happens. Okay, do I think... This is interesting. So one of the things You Are Complete does that I'm so passionate about is I believe that the process that I went through to get sober was so transformational that I kind of am so damn excited I want to share it with everybody in the world. So if you're not an addict or an alcoholic, I'm like, I'm sorry you're not an addict or an alcoholic. I really want you to use this. So, yes, I have taken this approach and I've applied it to people suffering from depression and anxiety. So they would say, I admitted to myself that I'm powerless over anxiety. And you could, I admitted to myself that I am powerless over my limiting beliefs and that it makes my life unmanageable.
Okay.
And then you can come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. And then you would turn your will and your life over to that power.
Which is what you have done.
Which is what I have done. So I do believe that this could be used with limiting beliefs, and I'm actually in the process of putting together a workshop that's going to be all about busting through obstacles, applying these spiritual principles, and I'm going to do it in January, right around the new year. So yeah, I do believe that there is a way to do it because nobody wants to admit defeat, but when you admit surrender means joining the winning side, right? So it doesn't have to be like, to me, the limiting belief is like you're attached to that limiting belief. What if you were to surrender the limiting belief and let go and believe
the opposite?
But how,
though? That's what I want to know is how do you surrender that limiting belief?
Acknowledging it. I think when you go back to the saying of what you resist persists, but when you surrender and you get into the flow of whatever this life energy force is, you see a lot more transformation and healing take place.
Yeah.
And because, the thing is, let's say I want to take one of these limiting beliefs. I can't go for what I want for fear of failure. Now, the thing is, isn't failure just very overglorified? I mean, what are we all so worried about?
Failure is full of lessons to learn. It's full-year. It's not failure.
It's full-year. I love that.
Yeah, it's like full of lessons to learn.
To coin that, full-year.
And I believe, like, if you're not failing in life, you're sitting on the sidelines. Like, what are you doing? You're just sitting there like, oh, my God, I don't want to do it. Like, you got to be in the game. You got to get dirty. Like, you got to do it. And going back to what we said is, like, you're not going to die from failure.
Now, what if you have somebody that is, again, I'm going to take a gentleman, and he's 48 years old, and He says, I've been working in banking and finance for 25 years, but I know I have a passion inside me. I know there's something bigger that is meant to happen with my life, but I can't move forward because I have a fear that I might fail. That person comes to you with that limiting belief of, I can't because I'm going to fail. What would you advise him?
I think when you step into the place of you're on purpose, you're doing what you are meant to do, you're here to accomplish something, your soul has a higher calling, whatever it might be in the world, I would encourage him to look at that underlying push and what that really is so that he could step into it. I'd also have him look at what are the limiting beliefs, why is that fear there? Okay, so maybe it's fear of failure. Well, where did that original fear come from? Why is it, are you scared that you're going to be abandoned by your family, you're going to be judged, you're going to be ridiculed, you're going to be shunned by your community that you've been building? For most of the people that I have met who step into their true authentic power and their true authentic purpose, they end up flying high. Everything just starts attracting towards them. They start really accomplishing whatever they're here to accomplish, and all of the resources come to them. And they might stumble and they might trip and they might skin their knees a little bit, but like you said, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example of Colonel Sanders. Now, we all know Colonel Sanders and his KFC example, but I'm going to recap it just in case you're not familiar with the story. So Colonel Sanders was sort of floundering, I don't want to say floundering in life, but he was moving from sort of career to job to career to job. In his 20s and 30s and 40s, he worked as a railroad operator. He was an aspiring lawyer, and then he decided to become an insurance salesman. But all this time, he really knew that he wanted to be in the food business. But it really wasn't something at the time, I guess in those years, he had the confidence to pursue. So it wasn't until the age of 48, 49, where he really buckled down and said, you know what, I want to create this 11 spice special secret chicken recipe, okay? This was basically his dream, right? This was his dream. And that was between the ages of 48, 49. And again, I've talked on past episodes about how coming to the cusp of those milestone years, whether it's 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, you sort of take a pause and you reassess what have the last 10 years been about and what are the next 10 going to be about. So small interjection there. But so he perfects this 11 spice recipe. But it wasn't until the age of 65.
Wow.
65. So he let another 15 years go by, not doing much with this. But that little voice was still talking to him saying, you know, you've got something here with this chicken idea. He started to go literally door to door to try and franchise the idea of having just like a standalone fried chicken type of store, if you will, back then.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, probably at the time, how many doors he had slammed in his face. But he kept at it. So at the age of 65, he started. 8 years later, so now we're talking the man is 73 years old. He had over 600 franchised KFCs in the USA. Today, there are over 18,000 KFCs around the world. The company is second only to McDonald's, and it's worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is someone that he knew what he wanted to do with his life, but for 48 years, and some would argue for almost 65, he didn't pursue it.
Now,
Okay.
I wonder what his life would be like, and this is something I would ask my client, is who would you be if you don't do this? If you got to your 70s and your 80s and you look back and you go, what was I thinking? Why did I not step into this fear? How much does the regret, the possibility of regret, the thought of feeling that regret weigh on you versus the fear and stepping through it? And maybe the fear is only going to last a little bit of time.
And I'm going to pause and jump in here, Bianca, before you do. But I wrote a blog just last week. You can go again onto my website and read the blog. But it's exactly that. For a number of years, I know for myself, I had a limiting belief that was placed on me. I've been very fortunate in a lot of ways, but one of the limiting beliefs I was self-imposing was, I want to be a television host, I want to be an interviewer, but my career took a different route, so it's too late for me now. So literally, almost my entire 30s went by, almost 10 years of my telling myself, well, I'm too old, it's too late, I should have done it 10 years ago, I should have been Juliana Rancic by now, I should have, and I can't. And what helped me get over that limiting belief is exactly what Kaitlin's talking about. I sat down one day and I projected myself 50 years into the future. I saw myself as my 80-year-old self. And I looked back at my life and I said, have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? And if I was to stay on the path that I was on, the answer to that at 80 would have been no. And I thought, how sad. And it kind of kicked me in the ass. And I, and what I came to understand was at the age of 38, that this limiting belief of it's too late now, you're too old, time's gone by, and it just snapped me right out of that. And I thought, no, and I flipped it completely and thought, now is the time. Now is the time that everything is perfect. Now is the time where life is ahead of you. Now is the time to tap into that. And so that exercise for anyone out there who is feeling a limiting belief of that kind, of any of those, whether it's falling in love, whether it's trying something new, project yourself 50 years into the future and ask yourself, am I happy with my life the way I think it's going to turn out?
I think it's important to note that it doesn't also have to be these big life-changing events. It doesn't have to be, I've got to change my career, I'm scared to step into love. It could be little things. For instance, 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine invited me to go stand up paddleboarding for the supermoon at night. And one of my fears, albeit irrational, is being in water, whether it be a swimming pool or the ocean at night. I swear Jaws is going to come through the drain and get me.
You saw Jaws when you were 3. It was those formative years.
Those formative years.
Imprint.
Thanks, parents.
That's
and
right.
I said, you know what? I really don't want to do it. Therefore, I have to.
Oh.
And I forced myself to throw on a wetsuit.
Were you scared?
Yes. I can't say what. Yes, very, very scared. And I may have had a glass of wine prior to going out on the water. That didn't even help.
Right.
But once it was 5 minutes in, it was the most spectacular, soul-stretching experience to be under that moon with a group of amazing people howling and playing in the water. And so the point is that it doesn't have to be these massive events in your life that you're scared to step into. It could be baby steps. It could be the little things, whether it's driving fast in the freeway in the fast lane, or it could be going on a trip that you never knew you wanted to go on because it's far away and it might cost too much money.
Kaitlin, you've actually, I've heard you and I quoted you, have been known for saying, get comfortable with the uncomfortable so that you can get more comfortable again.
Yes. I live and die by that. It is.
Explain that a little bit.
So you have to, everything is going to be uncomfortable at some point in your life. You don't get off of this roller coaster ride of life without feeling the bumps and the turns and the twists, and you might get a little nauseous, but you have to step into that uncomfortableness in order to grow, whether it's emotionally or spiritually, and hopefully both. So getting uncomfortable, like I did with the stand-up paddleboarding, and just saying, you know what, screw it, I've got to do it, because otherwise I'm going to remain limited in my experiences. And we're all on this plane, this earth field. This is what I call Earth School, to grow.
Well, and it's funny because I'm going to quote Bianca next. So Bianca's known for saying, it's your job to shine, so what are you waiting for? It's like, your time is now.
I got to tell you, any limiting beliefs is a selfish act, right? Because
how so? What do you mean?
By us not stepping into our full power and our truth, and if you have a passion for something and you want something or you want a relationship, that's there for a reason, and I believe that that's God-given. And so
the need or the feeling that you
passion,
have,
that
okay.
fire.
The event that manifests from that's a gift.
It's a gift, right? And so, I really try to, limiting beliefs keep us really, really small. And, we ask ourselves, like, who am I to shine? And I'm like, who are you not to shine? Who are you not to shine?
And I think the people that have allowed themselves to shine are the people who really have shaped the course of the world we're living in. So, for example, Oprah Winfrey, I'll take her as an example. If she had remained very quiet and shy and not really gone out there and said, you know what, I am a black woman in media. I am a fat woman on television. I am going to change the way television and talk shows are oriented. How many people has Oprah touched?
And Oprah has such a tremendous story. Oprah was...
What's Oprah's story? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
For people that, haven't heard it for a while.
Right. So I may not hit all the points, but, Oprah was sexually abused in her childhood. Her mother was 13 years old when she had her, so it was a child raising a child.
Oh.
I think she was raised primarily by, I don't know, it was the grandmother or the aunt. And then Oprah actually got pregnant at 13 years old, just like her mother, had the baby stillborn.
Wow. That's hard enough to have a stillborn baby when you're an adult. I can't imagine what that did to a 13-year-old.
Exactly. Just like the ego strength and the ability to handle that type of thing. And so she did not come from, having the cards.
Something comfortable.
Right.
Not comfortable. And look what she was able to do. And, Tony Robbins says, like, it's not about the resources. It's about your resourcefulness in life. And what you guys were kind of touching on before, one, Tony Robbins actually does, I've done this on YouTube with groups before. He does a whole thing called, I think it's like Christmas, what is that? Christmas story, Christmas Carol, past, present, and future. And you actually do, Katerina, exactly what you did, is you look at yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and you have to completely try and visualize looking at yourself in the mirror if you didn't do that thing that you really want to do or haven't become the real you. And it feels so crappy that ignites people into wanting to make the change, just like it did for you.
It did for me. Oh, absolutely it did. That really was the trigger mentally for me.
Yeah, and the tie between doing that activity and talking about Oprah and these successful peoples, they have incredible drive. And so when you were talking about the resistance of maybe why would a person not do this, one, Kaitlin hit on it as it's baby steps, and I'm really big on honoring the process. I'm not like, come on, just do it already. That doesn't work. We have to honor the process, and we have to ask for the willingness to drop the defenses that are keeping us stuck. And it can take time. Like KFC man, he had the idea, and it took 10 years to do it. I started You Are Complete, 2 years ago, posted 3 videos, got no results, felt totally defeated, stopped, had a miscarriage. My life was turned upside down, realized that my purpose is to birth this You Are Complete, and got back into it. It's a process.
So youarecomplete.com is your website now and your business.
Yeah, it's my full-time, it's my vlog, it's my business. I help people one-on-one, I run groups, I'm starting this workshop. This is my calling, but I had to step away from it to come back, and that's okay. That's part of the process, so honoring that.
A part of this process that I want to tap into and piggyback off of what you were saying is, Katerina, I loved how you said you went into the future, into your 80s, to be able to look back and say, well, what would my life be like? I think it's also really important in this process is that you turn back into the little girl you, the little boy you, and comfort. What was the nurturing that you didn't get? What was the validation that you didn't get? And you can do the same visualization by turning to that quote-unquote inner child and having a conversation with them saying, look at where we are, look at how far we've come, look at the tools that we've acquired, or look at the tools we can acquire because of our resourcefulness. And you almost scoop them up in your lap and say, look, we've got this. And you nurture that inner self, that inner being that is so scared and so fearful about what the possibilities of unknown could be. And that is so empowering. So doing it from both perspectives of your older self as well as your younger self is a great way to integrate the two.
And that's actually really great advice. And we all have busy days and we all have things to do. But if we really look at it and we carve out some time, we can all come up with some hours that we can devote, maybe pour a glass of wine, make a cup of tea, go and sit somewhere for a couple of hours with a notepad and a pen, and just let yourself dream a little bit, whether it's dream backwards or dream forward. And like you were saying with A Christmas Carol and Tony Robbins, he basically took that example of Scrooge, right, who was exactly that. He saw the past, he looked at the present, he projected into the future, and that really snapped, Scrooge out of it. And we're talking Charles Dickens. This is the classic. I mean, I know in my head I'm thinking the Mickey Mouse version of, But this is a classic, and it's a classic for a reason, because classic literature, because it has this foundation of thought.
Yeah.
It's true. Another good thing to do is, if you don't have hours and hours, although I love this suggestion, and I think everybody should sit down with a journal and just brainstorm what possibilities you can have. I did an exercise with a teen last night who was having a ton of limiting beliefs. Grabbing a Post-it note, but grabbing 20 of them and just writing, I am smart, I am beautiful, I am capable, I am lovable, I am loved, I am whatever your I am is, even if you don't believe it in this moment, and put these on your mirror so when you're brushing your teeth you can recite them. Put one on your dashboard of your car so when you're driving you can look at it and
I wanted to ask though, because that the affirmations, and we all read about doing your affirmations in the morning. How hokey is that though? Does it work?
I think it absolutely does work. When you start retraining your neural synapses to fire in a certain direction, if you're orienting towards positive thoughts and positive thinking, you're more likely to revert to that in moments of triggers. So if you are triggered by something, if you have this repeating pattern in your mind of I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I'm capable, you're going to revert to that more quickly than you are.
So you really are training your mind to think a certain way.
And this is what
with something as simple as putting a sticky note on your mirror.
This is what Buddhist mindfulness essentially is you are training your monkey mind to be more monk-like. So you can turn to the positives versus the negative training that we've had our whole lives.
And I think what you're talking about is focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have intention behind what you're focusing on, or are you just allowing the universe or your surroundings to just feed you whatever the heck it wants to feed you?
So what would so again, I'm in my 40s, and I have some limiting beliefs. What sort of focus? What would I focus on? What do you explain that a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you, in my life, one of the things I do that has been really hard is, I studied to be a classical ballet dancer. I was really, invested in my body, and I sort of was able to not really exercise after I did that for many years. And now I'm like, oh God, things are moving. What's happening? So one of the things I do is, I feel like comparison is just such a soul killer. So I try not to spend a lot of time. Like I'm very conscientious about the way that I set up my Instagram feed, my Facebook feed, the magazines, the things that come into my
world. You're interesting.
Yep. And so I try not to, have a lot of commercials or airbrushed or things that are telling me I'm not beautiful enough or being old is not going to be attractive.
And this
all
goes
that
back
kind of
to your
stuff.
point about choice, right? We do have a choice as to what we let influence us on a daily basis. For as much as that sounds, you have the choice of what channel you're going to watch when you go home at night.
Yes, and the same thing is for your brain. So what Kaitlin was talking about is you have the capability to change the channel in your mind. So I could spend time thinking about like, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not thin enough, or I could choose that, right? And that may be sort of programmed in my brain, and our brain does create neural pathways that if you have a thought a lot, it's much easier to go to that thought. It's almost like it creates a groove. So you have to really work hard to switch your thought, and I call it a lot of time with clients changing the channel to, I go to gratitude. I'm so grateful I'm healthy. I'm so grateful that, am breathing, that that my legs work and all that stuff. So it's really about changing the channel within your mind. And if you are able to start controlling the things that you focus on, I mean, that's a game changer.
How would someone go about doing that? Let's say I have a bad body image, and all I do every time I'm at the grocery store is I look at all these women that are on the magazine covers, and that just gets me more depressed.
Well, I call it
like, how do I stay away from that? It's in my face.
Yes.
I call what you were just saying I call it being a thought watcher, and it's the same thing that you were saying a minute ago. Is what do you choose to bring into your reality? First, if you see the woman on the magazine, of course she's beautiful. 99.9% of the time she's going to be airbrushed. You have to. This is where your thought training comes in. You see that, and you go, "Oh, I have the thought of I'm not her. I don't look as beautiful as her." If you have a rubber band on your wrist, snap it. Do something to interrupt that thought. Snap your finger. Consciously make the decision to go, oh, that's right. No, that is airbrushed. That's not realistic. Now I'm going to go buy some apples. I'm going to choose to put healthy food in my body. So I nurture the great, fabulous body that I've been given, and I'm going to take care of what I have rather than polluting it with negative thoughts and negative images. Interrupting the thought.
Interrupting the thought. And I actually really like even just something as practical as snapping a little elastic band on your wrist.
Yeah.
Because and maybe I'd challenge you at home to spend a day trying to be consciously aware of your daily limiting beliefs and how often you're thinking on the negative side of something versus on the positive side of something.
It's a good habit. Take a notebook and carry it around with you throughout the day. Have a pen open and ready, and every time you have a negative thought, make a tally mark. And by the end of the day, watch how many times you have shamed yourself, how many times you've ridiculed yourself, or you've said, I'm not good enough, worthy enough.
Or got anxious or frustrated.
And when you can look at it objectively, you go, oh, crap, you're really your worst bully.
Yes.
And day 2, try this again. And by the end of the week, if you do this for 5 days, Monday through Friday, see how the tally marks start to get narrower and narrower, smaller and smaller as you start training your brain to interrupt those negative thoughts.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a powerful trick.
Yes. I like to also, one of the greatest things besides practicing gratitude, so let's say we notice the negative thought, then what are we going to put in its place so we can, add gratitude for the things that we're grateful for. And the other thing too is, I have found that making a life where my job is to be of service has really helped me get out of my own way. Has really helped me to start getting out of my own way.
Because you suffered, from anxiety, some depression, the alcoholism, but you seem as though you're in a much better place as a human being right now.
Oh yeah, I'm like just lit up. I've never felt better.
And you're in your 40s, so that's great to
I'm
hear.
40, 41, February 11th. I
there we
am
go.
way into
I'm
the
February
40s.
12th.
Going into the 40s.
Aquarians
She's
unite.
The 11th, I'm the 12th.
Well, happy birthday, ladies. I'll have to have you back in February.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
I think it's important to note that if you look at any how to get happy list or book on any self-help book on the shelf, top 5, one of them will be of service to others.
Yep.
When you give back to your community, when you I don't care if it's the environment, plants, animals, or it's people.
Your children, your family.
Right.
You say hello to the barista, look them in the eye, and actually
How's
ask them,
your
how is your
day?
day? What is the energy that you bring into the space, right? Like
Right.
starting to focus on, like, how can I make this better?
And you know, it's interesting because my sister says that all the time. My sister is a very joyous, joyful person. And she says, you know, sometimes it makes me so happy to make someone else happy. And that could be
Yes.
as simple as being kind to the person at CVS, you know, that's checking out your...
It's
the-
all
the
about
checkout
that.
My
counter.
favorite game to play is
Is
because
it make other
those-
people happy game?
Yeah.
Yes, but the people that are at checkout counters at grocery stores, the barista at Starbucks, they're usually grumpy. They don't want to be there. They're dealing with people who are barking at them and
Yeah.
they're taking orders all day. But if you stop and take 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds to check in with them, how
Yes.
are you doing? And look them in the eye, like you said, and really make an authentic connection. Watch their vibration change. Watch their smile on their face grow, and then take note of how it makes you feel inside. It's a
Yeah.
fun game. It's an experiment you can play with, and then it turns into a habit, and then you get to sprinkle love everywhere you go.
Yeah, and then you're focusing on that versus focusing on yourself and your limiting beliefs. And then you realize that you're so much more than your body or your fear or your whatever your limiting belief is. You realize that there's so much more to you and that you would be surprised at the magic that is within you.
Well, you know, we always talk about trying to be better as human beings, and again, some of that is cliche, but I think a lot of it is not. A lot of it is truth, and if there were more of us that were kinder to more of us, then it would be a very different place. Ladies, we do have a topic of the day that we delve into that I want to get to here,
Oh, boy.
and the topic of the day it sort of ties into what we're talking about a little bit, and talking about limiting beliefs and how they might limit you later in life. I'm going to read it out, and then we're going to banter a little bit and gab. And if you're home and you have some comments on today's topic of the day, we'd love to have you call us. Again, it was 818-570-5085. So topic of the day today. As people grow and we progress in life, we get forced to look at different perspectives of where we're at different stages. Sometimes we think of reinventing our career. But when we think of this, we've usually had a career that spanned at least a decade or two. Is it smart in middle ages, in your 40s and 50s, to want to reinvent yourself, to take a career that you've spent 20 years cultivating and move it into a different direction? Can you and should you reinvent yourself 20 years into a career?
If not now, when? I think this is what we said a little while ago, is how are you going to feel when you're in your 70s and your 80s and you're looking back on your life? Did you live your purpose? Did you fulfill yourself? Were you living at your optimal level? Were you happy?
Can you answer that now? How happy are you?
I just changed my career, so I'm
Oh, there
very
you go.
happy. I took a leap out of my last career. I was in international commercial real estate. It was stable. It was comfortable. I was surrounded by people who were supportive, and I had my soul sucked dry. I was miserable, and I was probably making the most money. I was making the most money I've ever made in my life, and I was utterly depressed. I found it very difficult to be available for my friends and my family, and I took the leap. I packed up my bags, moved across the country, got accepted into my grad school of choice, and completely stepped into wanting to help other people grow and become more actualized, whole, and happy. And now creating my own brand to do it on a larger global scale rather than just one-on-one, although that still is very much my passion.
Right.
I took the leap into doing it.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the money, because that it seems to be a common path for a lot of people. You're in a career, it's going well, you've stuck with it because the money was good and it looked good on paper, and that was certainly true for me. I was finance and oil and gas for 10 years, making crazy money for
How
my
happy
age,
were you?
and I was miserable.
Yep.
Miserable. And so it's not the money. When we equate success, money comes from success. It sort of it falls from being successful, but it's not the definition of success.
It's not the catalyst for it.
Yeah,
Right.
just because you're successful doesn't mean you're going to make a lot
Right.
of money. And just because
Or
you
vice
made a lot of
versa.
money doesn't mean you're successful.
Right. And just
Yeah.
because you're making a lot of money doesn't mean you're happy. And also in that same vein, just because you're making a lot of money doesn't mean you're unhappy. there's people making a lot of money that are super happy. So
well, that's the goal, because money is energy. It's really energy. And so if you can start to harness all this stuff we're talking about with focus and energy and intentions and gratitude and all this kind of stuff, you can start to bring more abundance into your life doing the things that you want to do. I mean, I think a limiting belief that I've struggled with is that I'm not going to make enough money doing what I love. Like why do I have to?
How do you get over that? That's a good one.
Like the starving artist concept.
Yeah, like why
can't I starving in your 40s?
Yeah, like why do I have to just like do the 9 to 5? Like why does it have to be in a certain box? So how I get over that, and this was actually brought up at the beginning of the conversation or mid somewhere when we were talking about the KFC guy. I am a big fan of looking at the people who've done it. Looking at the people who've done what I want to do. I remember when I was first realizing that I was really an alcoholic, I thought it was a death sentence. So I would go online and I would Google celebrities in recovery.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'd be like celebrities who are alcoholics, and I would see all these people who were like successful and their life was awesome, and I was like, oh, this isn't a death sentence. And so I do the same thing now. I look at the Rob Bells and the Danielle Laportes and the Gabby Bernsteins and all these people who are spiritual teachers and working with a greater span of people and making a living. And it makes me like, why not me? This is doable. Like I can do this. So I'm conscious, and I try to reprogram that thinking and then do the stuff. Like if that comes up, I write about it. I ask my higher power to take it away from me, and I continue. For me, I always go back to my like gravy train is, how can I be of maximum service, and is this the venue of being of maximum service? I was in a career where I was working at a large nonprofit organization, and I was the director of research and evaluation. I was there 8 years. I worked my way up. I got to the top. I thought, this is the jam. I got there, and I was really disappointed.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is what it's like up here? Awesome, not. And so what I did was I didn't know what to do. So I basically remembered that I feel my best when I am doing what my Creator wants for me, when I'm doing what I call God's will. When I am in the flow and I'm present with people and I'm looking at them and I'm helping them, and I'm like, I love that feeling of being in that in-flow feeling of synchronicities, deja vu, all this awesome stuff. And so those to me are my little road markers. Those are my little winks from the universe of like, girl, you're right where you're
on
supposed
the right
to be.
track. That's right.
Keep going, girl. So I knew that, and what I did was I laid on the floor and I said, where can I be of maximum service? And I literally was in such a surrendered space that if my space in the world is to clean toilets, and I'm terrible at cleaning, nor do I like it, I actually want to do that. Like Katerina, if right now, like the masters of the universe came down and were like, you know what, Bianca, you're really meant to clean toilets. Like that's for you. And there's nothing wrong with that, because people have to do that job. And that's what I'm saying is that I am no better or worse than anyone else. I just want to be doing God's will, whatever the hell that is. And so I asked, and what was amazing is that a job fell in my lap right afterwards. And I started working in recovery. So I started to teach other people struggling with addiction the things that I learned. And now I keep getting messages that, building You Are Complete is the way to go. But if I ever really received a very strong message that I needed to be somewhere else, I needed to go to Africa and build a school, I needed to, take care of a parent, God forbid.
Then you
I would do that. I am just like, I'm a vessel. The universe is my boss.
I know that both of you, in speaking with you before, you're both, I don't want to say fans of the law of attraction, but you're believers in it. I would love to have you back on a different episode.
Oh,
to
so
talk
much
about
to
the
do
law
there.
of attraction and how, later in life we can still tap into that, because as kids we're really, we're a little closer to all of that world innately.
Yes.
We are at the top of the program, though, at the end of the program, I should say. One more time for our listeners. Bianca, where can we find you?
I would love for you to join me at youarecomplete.com. You can subscribe, become part of the inner tribe. I send out a weekly message. Certain things I only send via email. You can catch me on Instagram at youarecomplete, Twitter, Snapchat, youarecomplete.b, LinkedIn.
There you go.
Everywhere. I would love to connect with you. Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. And Kaitlin, how about you?
I am Kaitlin Robinson again. You can find me at askkaitlin.com, or you can catch my show every Sunday called Soul Stretch Sunday with also Ask Kaitlin on YouTube, and also Instagram, Twitter, all of the above. Ask Kaitlin.
Perfect. Well, I would like to tell both of you that you left us with some really great little exercises to consider doing and helping us when we do find ourselves sort of caught in this limiting belief situation. The exercises that the ladies shared, and the one that I shared too, try it if you've got any sort of doubt in your mind about anything that you are working with or thinking about. Try these exercises, and I'm going to go get a little snap on the wrist.
Ask for help. You don't have to do this alone.
You don't.
Absolutely. I'm Katerina Cozias here for LA40, LA Talk Radio. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you again next week. Oh, next week I've got an interesting, before I leave you, interesting couple of guests coming on. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurship and making a change in that direction over 40. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you again next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.